What are some places on Earth that are still unexplored because locals fear them, and what are they afraid of? It's not unexplored per se, but the plutonian at Hierapolis emits toxic gas intense enough to kill most living things in moments, and was assumed to be a gate to the underworld. In a rather illuminating display of their culture, rather than avoiding the cave of painfully slow asphyxiation, the Romans turned it into a tourist attraction, at which one could purchase a live animal to throw in or meet oracles of Pluto who had been through into the cave and lived. Purchasing animals to throw into the void, that seems a little excessive, maybe a little sadistic. Ugh, gross. Next story. The Strid is an unassuming body of water in Bolton Abbey, Yorkshire. It looks like a giant little stream in a quiet countryside. It's so narrow you could pretty much hop across. Don't fall in though, because there's more to it than meets the eye. Just below the surface are deep underwater caverns and churning currents. You'll be swept below and vanish underground and underwater. Your remains will never be found. Next story. Bottomless lakes in New Mexico are what they sound like. Some of the small lakes have no bottom and feed underground rivers and streams stretching hundreds, possibly thousands of miles. Trackers have been tossed in and found days later in the Gulf of Mexico. They've claimed many lives of careless swimmers, and the dangerous lakes are now closed off. I swam in the safe ones nearby, but always felt kinda creeped out. Next story. Morgan Island, aka Monkey Island, about 4,500 acre island off the coast of Beaufort, South Carolina, south of Charleston, is off limits due to a colony of monkeys living there who are infected with herpes B. 1,400 of them, research animals, were relocated there in 1979 and have apparently thrived. Yeah, I think as a human society, we should be A-okay with giving those monkeys that little plot of land in South Carolina. You keep your herpes. Next story. The tomb of the Chinese emperor, Qin Shi Huangdi. Although we've seen images of his famous terracotta warriors, nobody has ever entered the tomb, since he was the most tyrannical and violent leader in Chinese history, and because he was so powerful, there's a lot of superstition about his evil spirit and other crazy things about it. Not to mention, there's a rumor of a lake of mercury within the tomb, so it could prove dangerous to open it all. The Chinese government is not allowing the tomb to be opened and zealously restricts people from having access to the land surrounding the tomb. Just interesting. I'd really like to know what's inside, to be honest. Edit. People are mentioning Mao being way more tyrannical. I know he was horrible, but I was under the impression that although Mao killed more people, that was partially due to the length of his reign versus that of Qin. And also that Qin employed a lot more brutal tactics, unlike Mao's extreme communism. Next story. The Nahanni National Park in northwest Canada, also known as the Valley of Headless Men. There are no roads leading in, and it's only accessible by boat or plane. Ancient tribes of the Nahanni Valley were afraid to settle within the region as they believed it to be an evil, haunted place inhabited by various spirits, specters, and devils. In the 18th century, Europeans began arriving to the area looking for gold. In 1908, two brothers, Willie and Frank MacLeod, purchased farther into the valley looking for gold and disappeared only to turn up beheaded. More beheadings and mysterious deaths began occurring over the years. In 1945, a trapper appeared to have been flash frozen despite evidence of having a fire going and clutching a pack of matches. Many others just simply vanished, never to be found. Around 44 people had vanished under unknown mysterious circumstances by 1969. To this day, there's no answer as to what was responsible for the beheadings or the disappearances. The area is so forbidding and remote that very few people other than adventurous rafters ever attempt to explore it. Despite being a national park, Nahanni Valley is almost completely unexplored. Edit. Other known beheadings were a prospector named Martin Jorgensen, whose cabin burned down in 1917, and his skeleton was recovered from the ashes with no sign of his skull. And in 1945, a miner from Ontario was found dead in his sleeping bag with his head missing. Edit. I tried looking more into where Martin Jorgensen is from, and almost everything I found all had him listed as Swiss, with one place listing him as Norwegian, so I'll remove calling him Swiss until I find a conclusive answer. I promise, I was just going off the reading I had done and wasn't just making my own assumptions. Next story. Hauska Castle was built to cover up the opening to hell, a seemingly bottomless pit from which the demons of hell would crawl out at night to wreak havoc. Located in the Czech countryside, Before the castle was built to seal this entrance to hell, prisoners who had been condemned to death were thrown in. Scary crap, my dudes. Next story. North Sentinel Island. Its inhabitants are one of the few, possibly one of the only peoples untouched by technology. They're also very violent and protective of their land against outsiders, attacking anyone who goes near. Local governments even decided they have jurisdiction to kill anyone who interferes with them to help preserve their pre-technology way of life. So no one goes there except at their own risk. Because of this, it's impossible to explore the island properly, and even more unfortunately, learn about their incredible culture. Next story. Recently, an ancient city was discovered in the vicinity / in the forest area of Rio Platano, Honduras. Recently, because the cartels have such a big effing hold over it, that it's simply impossible to go in there without dying, or worse. So much history that could await along that river, not found because of drug lords. La Ciudad Blanca, I believe it was called. Next story. There's an area in Tibet called the Spango Gorge that allegedly has a massive hidden waterfall that only appears to people who have reached nirvana. Last I checked, the Chinese don't allow people to explore the area much, but that may have changed by now. There's a book about it written by a guy named Ian Baker who did 2 expeditions into the gorge. Next story. The Darien Gap, a 100-mile gap in the Pan America Highway, covering terrain that includes Panama and Colombia, but is effectively governed by neither. Most of it is marshland, and with virtually no infrastructure, it's a wet cesspool of tropical disease and, historically, paramilitary groups. People do live in it in certain regions, and migrants traverse its more worn paths out of desperation, but it's virtually guaranteed to claim the lives of the careless. There's nothing of civilization or man's law there. Next story. There's a huge sinkhole behind my old house in Kentucky. Kentucky is absolutely full of caves. Anyways, it has a river flowing at the bottom and through a tunnel. So there's 2 cave entrances that nobody in my neighborhood had the balls to go into. My mom's friend visited one day, and she's a geologist, so she's huge into caves and wanted to see. I brought her there to take a look. She basically glanced at it and was like, F no, we'll die if we go in there. The current is very strong, and the rocks surrounding it looked very eroded to her. She said it's at high risk of collapsing, and the current would sweep us underground either way. I wish we had brought more of her tools and stuff. Supposedly, she could have put in like a sonar buoy to see how far it goes. Next story. There are some places down at the Atchafalaya Basin that no human has ever set foot on because of the 17-plus foot alligators there. Seriously, I'll try to find the link to the Louisiana wildlife, but there's this one that bit the front end of an airboat completely off. Someone has a picture of it carrying a whole deer in its mouth. It wasn't photoshopped. Next story. The Padmaswamy Temple. The last area cannot be opened. If so, something cataclysmic will happen. Supposedly, there's a crap ton of isolated snakes who've been breeding in the darkness for ages. Have fun with that. The door doesn't seem to have a way to be opened, so there'd be some destruction. However, there's a benefit of this. The other temple rooms that have been opened, the riches, have pretty much been siphoned off by family and government corruption. So the question is, who owns what amounts to a national treasure? A single family or India as a country? And how best to protect that? Next story. There's this island close to India. Just kidding. La Cueva de los Toyos, a cave system in Ecuador that has been explored before, but not fully due to religious reasons, superstitions from the Aboriginals. And because of the Ecuadorian government, for some reason, has it practically off limits to anyone, instead giving permission to explore a smaller cave system that's connected to the former, but it's not the real one. Different artifacts have been found, but a special one stands out of a human eagle form, most likely a god, that is for all intents and purposes exactly the same as another one that's found on ancient Mesopotamia, if I'm remembering correctly. Weird, considering that ancient cultures didn't have any sort of contact with each other. That, plus gold and scripts. The normal Indiana Jones stuff. Oh, and Neil Armstrong was once there as part of one of the expeditions in the 70s. Next story. Hades Gate, or the Gate to Hell, in Denizli, Turkey. Supposedly, there's so much carbon dioxide coming out of the entrance of the ancient site that anything that gets close to it dies from asphyxiation. Scientists have determined, because this cave sits along a fault line, that the carbon dioxide filled it from an opening in the Earth's crust. Next story. I lived in the northern part of the Republic of Congo in a town called Mfando. It was extremely remote, only accessible by boat or plane. There were many villages surrounding our city that were even more remote and only accessible by a dugout canoe. One of these places was Lake Teli. The locals would talk about an animal or monster called Mokele Mimimbi. In Lingala, the tribal language, it meant one who stops the flow of water. They basically thought it was a huge dinosaur that lived in the water there. They would describe it like it was a brontosaurus. They were terrified of where it lived because there were old legends that it would kill people with its eyes, and if anyone ate its meat, it would kill the whole village. It was hard to explore that part of the country because people tended to avoid it. Next story. The tomb of Genghis Khan. We know it's in Mongolia and probably near the area he was born. But other than that, we don't know a damn thing. For a few reasons. When he died, they hid it on purpose. The people of Mongolia don't want it found, and I remember hearing somewhere that it might have been found by Russia, and is in an area where they've got something like missile silos or something like that. But oh boy, I can't even imagine what he'd have been buried with. Next story. The Inyanga Mountains in Zimbabwe. The myth is that if you climb this mountain and make nasty or derogatory comments about the vegetation or rocks or anything you see there, like you pick a fruit and comment on how bitter it tastes, you'll disappear forever. It sounds ridiculous until you learn that several people, including tourists, have disappeared in that mountain. Extensive manhunts and helicopter searches fail to find a single person, dead or alive. Locals fear the mountain, but the tourists take it as a challenge. It doesn't end up good for a lot of them. The most recent case was Zaidada. Next story. The Pipe Barrens in New Jersey. Creepy crap, creepy folklore. Jersey Devil's home, KKK meeting ground, dead body disposal site for the mafia, ghost girl, and random pond. Many other bizarre things there. All I ever saw was a Klan meeting and some very creepy satanic cult stuff in an abandoned house out there. Books in Weird New Jersey have articles and such on the place. Really interesting, to be honest. Next story. Kao'olawe. It's one of the Hawaiian Islands. No one lived there due to no fresh water source. During World War II, the U.S. Army used it as a training ground and bomb range. For a long time, people couldn't go there because there were still landmines around the island. They may have been cleared out now, but there still isn't anyone who lives there. Also, Molokai Island had a lot of beaches with strong riptides that were very dangerous. I remember we were afraid to go to the beach when we visited. There are some other beaches like that as well on the other islands. Next story. Padmanabhaswamy Temple here in Kerala, India. There are 6 underground vaults labeled ATOF in the temple, out of which 5 have been opened. From these 5 vaults, about a ton of gold in the form of jewelry, coins, and utensils has been found. Apart from diamonds and other precious stones, necklaces stretching 9 feet long. But the real mystery lies in the Vault B, which is yet to be opened. There's a warning on the door written in Sanskrit that curse and calamity will befall anyone who tries to open the door. A door is said to have been sealed with Nagabandham for the snake seal by the Siddha Purush, aka a very powerful sage who's realized the true potential that a human can achieve through spiritual discipline, such as meditation. A Siddha Purush is like a living god, and only a Siddha Purush can open this vault again using the Garuda mantra. Any other human being who tries to open the vault will fail and feel the wrath of the 7-headed serpent that guards the vault. This 7-headed serpent is one of the primal beings of creation and servant of the creator of the universe, God Vinshu. I think Indiana Jones and Nathan Drake would have to probably team up on this one. Also Harry Potter to deal with your snake situation. Just kidding. It's just a cool story, though. I do like the lore behind this one. Next story. In South Africa, there's a cave system known as the Cradle of Mankind. Because the most Australopithecus remains have been found there, people are allowed to go on guided tours of the caves. At the bottom of the main cave, there's an underground lake/water system. The SA government has banned any diving exploration of the lake. This is because years ago, a group of divers became trapped and ran out of air. If anyone is interested, I'll upload some pictures of it. Edit. Here are the pictures. These are the only pics I could find on my hard drive. I never did get any good shots of the water, though. Next story. The Nahanni Valley in western Canada, called the Headless Valley, in particular, a place called the 200-Mile Gorge. The natives that lived there didn't like outsiders. The other natives feared them, and they had a penchant for decapitating victims and supposedly just vanished. The region is still largely unexplored because it's extremely remote, and if legends are to be believed, cursed. Place has it all. Native ghost warriors, Bigfoot sightings, aliens, caves full of ancient dead goats, and prehistoric animals. Next story. In the area around Kenora, Ontario, roughly 2 hours east of Winnipeg, there have been reports of Wendigo spirit loose for at least 150 years. On a nearby island called Tunnel Island, there's a white pine aged to be roughly 300 years old. The Wendigo is said to live in the tree. There's even a sign stating the history, and warning any visitors to touch the tree at their own risk. Next story. For many years, the Victoria mining claims on Roche de Boulay Mountain in British Columbia's north coast were voluntarily off limits due to massive amounts of radiation. The claims were mined for uranium during the Second World War, some of which ended up in the Trinity test. It was reported that for the first decade, a blue-white glow could be seen emanating from the valley where the mine was located. To this day, the waste piles are devoid of moisture and snow, even in the dead of winter. Almost everyone who worked at the Victoria claims died around the age of 45, almost all due to cancer of some form or another. I visited the place back in 2004 with a radiation detector and was blown away by how hot the waste pile was. Next story. The Mississippi is big, deep, and very muddy. There are loads of dams that need maintenance, but lots of divers won't do the job. There's the hazard of being sucked into the hydroelectric dam, but another reason given is that they're scared of the catfish. The fish just need to sit there and the food goes to them and they can get huge. Sure, the Mississippi is explored, but verifying if those catfish are even there or not is next to impossible. Next story. All throughout the world, wherever there are glaciers, there are crevices. Massive ones. Ones nobody ever even knows exist because they're under snow. Ones that look like a small hole but open up into massive chasms you could never climb out of, etc. The fear, obviously, is never coming back out. An example of a really scary place full of them is near the base of Everest from the south side, the Khumbu Icefall. It's the start of a massive glacier, and it moves fast enough that it's constantly changing. People actually do climb over the top of it as part of the primary route to climb Everest, but actually going down into the crevices is something you absolutely avoid. And even if you did go down there and explore one day, a few hours later, everything could be very, very different. Next story. Perhaps my favorite, and that's closest to me, is the former nuclear jet testing labs in the Dawsonville Forest in Georgia. They're abandoned now. Some people have explored there, but back in the 50s, there is a naked nuclear testing, no protection barrier, which means there's concern for high levels of residual radiation. That said, the bunkers still exist, rumors to be complete with furniture and other things untouched since it was abandoned. So I lived in North Georgia for a time myself, and I can confirm that this rumor is absolutely true. This place exists, and boy is it eerie to just be in the vicinity of. Ooh. Next story. North Sentinel Island. It's a small island near India with a population of around 40 people. We've made contact with one in 1780 when a British ship crashed there. The locals attacked that ship and killed a bunch of the people and scared off everyone else. When we tried to re-establish contact in 1980 via helicopter, they launched arrows at it. Some say there's some kind of secret there, and yeah. Next story. I live in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. There are a lot of spots people have never been or haven't been for centuries. It's half rational, half irrational. The spots in the woods are so overgrown and untouched that there are places you could never walk through between trails, and it would be a serious pain in the ass to excavate. The other problem is that all these areas are haunted, or the Jersey Devil goes through, according to locals. The real actual problem is that the Pine Barrens of New Jersey are like a desert swamp. The roots go way down through the sand, and the parts above ground are way, way overgrown and full of all the wildlife that used to be here. Most people in South Jersey are only used to squirrels and deers, and that's it. Next story. This reminds me of the shamaness Queen Himiko of the Yamataikoku Kingdom. Tomb Raider fans will immediately know what I'm talking about. Dating back to Nihon, about 250 AD, Japanese archaeologists and scholars have debated where her kingdom, and more importantly, her burial grounds were located. In the recent decades, there's been huge speculation about her burial site being within one of the early Hashihaka kofans, key-shaped burial site, in Sakurai, Nara, Kansai region. Apparently, carbon dating of different artifacts around the site dates back to around 250 AD, but the Imperial Household Agency absolutely will not allow for excavation of something this important in history in order to preserve. So we may never know if Queen Himiko's tomb is actually within that particular Kofun burial mound. Fun fact, one of the largest graves in the world by area is held by Emperor Ningtoku within the Kofun area during the mid-5th century. Next story. There's a wildlife park where the erosion happens both vertically and horizontally, resulting in a maze of rocky canyons where every rock is razor sharp. Researchers sometimes go in there, but even taking a brief knee from stumbling can wind up getting you several inches of rock spike embedded into your kneecap. Next story. Some roaming Bedouin tribes in the Sahara Desert of Egypt and the Sudan are rumored to accept demons in their society and are practicers of black magic. This was a big topic of interest in the 80s, and many journalists tried to get interviews. Some went missing, and those that allegedly found them said they saw people with animal legs and other weird stuff and barely avoided capture, deciding it wasn't worth the fame. Edit. Yeah, jinn can be good or bad, but the good kind aren't interested in humans. I heard about this from relatives talking about stuff that people don't usually talk about. I don't have any more info, but good luck. People over here take the concept of taboo very seriously, and this is one of those things. Next story. According to the last episode of Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown, there's a forested region of Bhutan that's not developed or even entered by the locals because it's said to inhabit evil spirits. That's about all I know, just figured I'd share it. I found the fact that there's no roads, infrastructure, or human inhabitants in that area interesting. Even if Bhutanese people lose cattle that wander into that area, they apparently won't go after them. Next story. Mount Kailash, China/Tibet. It's a 6,600-meter peak in the Chinese part of the Himalayas near Marisavar Lake. Kailash is another name for Lord Shiva. The mountain is considered sacred by both the Hindu as well as Buddhist communities, and as a result, the Chinese government has banned anyone from scaling it. One mountaineer did get a permit, but had to withdraw due to the public backlash. In the past, people who tried to scale it accounted for it being very difficult. The locals believe that Lord Shiva resides there, and there have been many other theories related to it. One of them being that it's actually a pyramid which is connected to others like the Great Pyramid via a network of underground tunnels. And as a result, till date, it remains a peak yet unscaled. Next story. Right here in NorCal, we have Mount Konocti, a dormant volcano. The surface of the mountain itself is well explored, but it's said to be full of caves. Allegedly, the entrances were dynamited decades ago to keep kids from wandering in and getting killed. Part of the lore is that the cave complex connects to adjacent Clear Lake, and that the native Pomo tribe explored this area once during a drought that lowered the lake sufficiently. Divers have never found it, and it may also be a thermal feature that's too hot to explore. Next story. The Inadai Massif in northern Chad comes to mind. There are desert tribes that use wadis, which are among the busiest in the Sahara, and ancient peoples live there. But there are hundreds of thousands of miles of labyrinth that are probably pretty unexplored, and few others but the desert people see any of it. There are several reasons. It's in the Sahara and difficult to get to in the best of times, requiring a well-equipped expedition to make it there purely because of geography. Politically, it's a dangerous place right now too, and various militia and terrorist groups are likely to be hiding there as well as some desert raiders. I've tried to convince locals to take me, but all refuse. Next story. There are actually a ton of places that are unexplored and not very populated. Siberia, New Guinea, Patagonia, which is basically a big iceberg. One of my favorite is the world's largest cave in Vietnam. The surrounding cave systems also have never been surveyed. Satellites and drones can't do it either. It's so big, it has its own river, jungle, and ecosystem. Hang Son Doong was discovered less than 10 years ago, and only 500 visitors per year are allowed in. Next story. When I went to Australia last year, I was actually told that there's a rainforest that's closed off by boulders piled to cover the rainforest. The only way to get there is by helicopter, and the crazy thing is that a couple years ago, 3 or 4 new species of animals were discovered. I don't know why it's closed off, but the rainforest is called Cape Melville. Comment why you think it's closed off. Next story. Northeastern Manitoba. It's not so much out of fear, but isolation. There are 2 rail lines that run into it. You need special grants to be able to go there, and it's really restricted. As in, only government-employed rangers can get the permits to go. You know, if the rail lines haven't broken down. Can't remember the park's name.